He was heaven's brightest star, the golden boy of eternity. But one thought, "I will rise above God," changed everything. This is the full story of Lucifer's rise, rebellion, an eternal fall. Trust me, it's nothing like the cartoons. Part 1. The rise of Lucifer, heaven's brightest star. Before evil ever existed, before mankind ever walked the earth, it was only light. Infinite goodness filled the heavens, and every angel radiated with the Creator's glory. There was no pain, no pride, no rebellion. Every being that existed lived only to praise, to serve, and to love. And among this celestial host, one angel stood above the rest, Lucifer. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, the scriptures say. Lucifer was not just another angel. He was God's first creation, the blueprint of brilliance, sculpted by the hand of the Almighty himself. No other being had been formed with such intention, such elegance, such power, wasn't born into creation like the rest. He was crafted, personally, intentionally, perfectly. Lucifer's beauty was unmatched, his intellect second only to God, and his authority undeniable. He wasn't just admired by angels, he was revered. He led them in worship, conducted the choirs of heaven, and stood nearest to the eternal throne. To the eyes of all, Lucifer was heaven's morning star, a living flame that lit the skies with his praise. His voice, fierce yet soft, powerful yet soothing, was said to pierce the very veil of eternity. God called him masterpiece. He was given dominion over the holy mountain of God and allowed to walk among the fiery stones. Every step he took shimmered with divine purpose. Angels, seraphim, cherubim, archangels, all watched him in awe. Lucifer wasn't proud, not yet. He was humble, focused, passionate. His every action, every word, every song was an offering of love to his Maker, and God delighted in him. But here's the mystery of it all. Even perfection can fall. Even light can flicker. Even the most beautiful creation can break. Lucifer's story didn't begin with rebellion. It began with radiance. And that's what makes it so haunting. Because before he became Satan, before he became the destroyer, the deceiver, the prince of darkness, he was heaven's brightest light. But how did that happen? How does a being crafted in perfect wisdom and beauty become the very embodiment of evil? How does love turn to pride? How does praise turn to poison? The seeds of his fall weren't obvious. They were subtle whispers in his mind, questions in the silence, sparks in the dark. What if? Why not me? These weren't shouted rebellions. They were thoughts, quiet, dangerous, growing. Lucifer began to admire his own light a little too much. He stopped seeing it as a gift and began to see it as his entitlement. He forgot that his beauty reflected God's glory, not his own, and slowly, pride crept in. He didn't fall because God rejected him. He fell because he rejected God's place in his heart. That is the tragedy. Lucifer had everything: power, position, beauty, favor, but he wanted more. He didn't want to reflect glory. He wanted to receive it. He didn't want to worship the throne. He wanted to sit on it. In his heart, he began to whisper, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." With that, the morning star began to dim. Not because God stopped loving him, but because he stopped loving the God who made him. Part 2. The Spark of Pride. How Lucifer's fall truly began. Lucifer's story didn't collapse in a single moment. It began with a whisper, a flicker of thought, a question that no one else dared to ask. What if my light could shine brighter than any other? What if I was meant for something more? These were not the words of rebellion, not yet. They were seeds, small, silent, nearly invisible. But inside Lucifer's perfect soul, they took root. And as with any seed, once it's planted and left unchecked, it begins to grow. As far, Lucifer had everything: beauty beyond measure, wisdom beyond compare, an influence beyond any other celestial being. The angels listened to him. Even the seraphim sang under his direction. His voice led the heavens in songs of praise. His presence brought harmony. His words stirred joy. But something had changed. At first, no one noticed, not even Lucifer. The spark inside him was subtle. His thoughts became slightly more introspective, his words less filled with awe and more with contemplation. A longing began to rise in his heart, not to serve, but to ascend. God had given every angel free will. They were not robots, not puppets, not bound by blind obedience. Love, to be pure, must be chosen. And so, even in heaven there was freedom. And with freedom came the possibility of pride. The morning star began to shine with a strange new glow, still beautiful, still radiant, but colder, more self-aware. When Gabriel, the messenger of heaven, approached Lucifer and asked gently, "Brother, what weighs on your spirit that your light flickers?" Lucifer replied with a smile, calm, mysterious, distant. "There are things, dear Gabriel, that even we cannot understand." The choir began to notice his absence. Where once he stood front and center, now he lingered in the back. Where once his voice led, now it wavered or stayed silent. His eyes, once full of wonder, now stared toward the heights. Above even the throne, heaven had no chains. Lucifer was not imprisoned. And so, in his freedom, he began to wander mentally and spiritually away from his first love. Some angels began to sense it. His charisma remained intact. His wisdom hadn't faded, but now, there was a shift, a tension, a hunger. He questioned things that were never questioned. He pondered truths that were once accepted with joy. "Perhaps there's more beyond the order we've known," he whispered to a fellow cherub. "Perhaps our purpose is not just to serve, but to lead, to rise." That whisper reached ears it shouldn't have. And some angels, dazzled by his brilliance, began to listen. Lucifer never demanded worship. He never threatened. Didn't need to. His presence was persuasive, his logic sharp, his passion contagious. He spoke not as a traitor, but as a visionary. He wasn't casting darkness, he was offering an alternate light. But heaven, though full of love, has laws. Lucifer was still blameless. Technically, he hadn't yet disobeyed. But God saw deeper. He saw where the path was leading. So God called out to him not with wrath, but with love. "Lucifer, my son, the seal of perfection. I sense your heart turning from me. Your light grows restless." Lucifer, standing in the presence of the one who created him, looked into God's eyes with something between reverence and resistance. "Father, you made me to understand, to wonder, to explore. Isn't it natural that I seek more of your glory?" And God, with infinite patience, replied, "Yes, my son, but remember, the light you admire is not yours. It is mine, reflected in you. When you forget that, your light becomes shadow." Lucifer said nothing, but inside a fire stirred. "Why must I always reflect someone else's glory?" he thought. "Was I not made beautiful, wise, capable? Why must I remain beneath?" That question was the match. And pride, the dry forest of ego, caught fire. The Father, still merciful, gave him time. Time to reflect, time to return. But the whispers grew louder. Lucifer's worship turned into silence. His reflection into comparison, his obedience into resentment. Soon, the idea became a desire. The desire became a belief, and the belief became a decision. "I will rise above the stars of God. I will ascend to the highest heaven. I will make myself like the Most High." And with that, the angel who once led heaven's worship began to lead something else, not a song, but a silent rebellion. Part 3. The Incarnation that shattered Lucifer's pride. As the seeds of rebellion began to grow in Lucifer's heart, quiet whispers turned into a deafening roar, and heaven itself began to tremble. Lucifer's pride had consumed him. He was no longer content to reflect the light of God. He wanted the light for himself. But there was more to come, something that would change everything. At this point, Lucifer's rebellion was still contained, still a hidden longing in his soul. But God knew that the time was drawing near. God, in his infinite wisdom, decided to reveal a new plan, one that would both test Lucifer's heart and reveal to all of heaven the depth of his love. One day, in the midst of the perfect harmony of heaven, God made an unexpected declaration. The angels, who had lived in eternal peace, heard the Creator's voice, filled with tenderness and mystery. "I will create a new world," God announced, "a place where life will flourish in new ways. But more than that, I will create beings in my image and likeness. I will become one of them." At these words, heaven fell silent. The angels were used to hearing of God's grand designs, but this was different. This was a revelation that would shake the very foundations of heaven. "I will become flesh. I will enter this new world as a human, and my son will take on a human form. His name will be Jesus Christ, and in his humanity you shall worship me." It was an act of unimaginable love, a mystery beyond comprehension. The Creator, the one who spoke the stars into existence, would humble himself and walk among his creation, not as an all-powerful deity, but as a fragile human being. And not just any human being, but the humblest of all born into a manger, living as a servant, suffering as a man. To the angels, this was incomprehensible. God in all his glory would become human. He would suffer. He would die. Heaven's joy and awe were mixed with confusion. But Lucifer did not celebrate. He stood still, his mind racing. The bright light of pride within him began to dim. He had always been the closest to the throne, the most radiant, the most honored. And now God was going to choose to lower himself, to become like the very beings he had created, to worship the form of a man. This was the final blow to Lucifer's pride. This was humiliation. Why would the Creator lower himself like this? Why would he take the form of fragile, sinful humans? Why not me? Lucifer, once the morning star, now felt that his place, the place he deserved, was being taken by a human form. His mind was consumed by jealousy, bitterness, and rage. He could not fathom why God, in his infinite wisdom and power, would choose to become human. He felt betrayed, abandoned, his purpose diminished. In that moment, Lucifer's heart hardened, and a dark decision formed within him. Why should we? Beings of light bow to something inferior? Why should we worship a mortal? Why should I, the first and brightest, kneel before a man? Lucifer's inner turmoil erupted, could no longer stand in the presence of this revelation. His heart was now filled not with love, but with disdain. He turned to the angels who had gathered around, his voice calm but filled with bitterness. "Do you not see the mistake?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Why should we bow to something beneath us? We were made from pure light. We should be above all of this, not worshiping flesh." His words spread like wildfire. His followers, angels who had once looked up to him, now began to question. The seeds of rebellion took root in their hearts. How could the Creator do this? How could he ask the angels, beings of light, created in his image, to bow before a mortal? It made no sense. Lucifer, with his authority and charisma, spoke with a calm, persuasive logic. His words were like venom, poisoning the minds of those around him. Painted a picture of a future where they, the mighty angels, would never have to serve anyone again. A future where they would rise above the human race, above God himself. He promised them power. He promised them freedom. Freedom from God's rules. Freedom from worshiping a mere human. He promised them glory. And slowly, like a spreading darkness, the rebellion gained strength. The angels who followed Luciferians, the most beautiful, the wisest, the most revered now, began to form an army. An army to rise against the very Creator who had made them. They saw in Lucifer a new leader, a new hope for greatness, and they were willing to follow him. But there was one who would not bow to Lucifer's words. There was one who still remembered his true purpose. There was one whose faith in God could not be shaken. That angel was Michael. With unwavering faith, Michael stood before Lucifer, his voice rising like a sword. "Who is like God?" he cried. "Who is like the Creator of all things? You are blinded by pride, Lucifer. You are the one who has forgotten your place." The words struck Lucifer like lightning. No one had dared to challenge him before. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Michael, the smallest among the archangels, had dared to defy him. And for the first time in Lucifer's heart, something flickered doubt. But Lucifer's pride burned too brightly to admit defeat. He tried to push Michael away with words and anger, but Michael's conviction was too powerful. Michael's cry, who is like God, was a reminder to all the angels, there is no one like God. There is no one greater. There is no one above him. Lucifer's rebellion had begun. Heaven would never be the same again. Part 4. The War in Heaven. When angels took sides before the earth rotated once, before the oceans were drawn into their depths, before man even breathed, there was war, not in shadows, not in whispers, but in the very courts of heaven. Lucifer, heaven's brightest star, had grown discontent. Worship once filled him with joy, but now it felt like chains. The glory he reflected was no longer enough. He wanted his own, and so began the great deception. Not of words, but of motives. He didn't scream rebellion. He suggested freedom. He spoke to the angels not as a tyrant, but as a visionary. Why should the Creator keep his glory to himself? He asked. Are we not glorious too? Do we not deserve our own thrones? At first it sounded innocent, even rational. But pride rarely shouts, it whispers. Now, a third of heaven's host, countless in number, leaned in. 1 out of every 3 divine beings was drawn into this cosmic seduction. That's 33.3%, if you're counting. Not by force, but by persuasion. Not by anger, but by a smile. Lucifer painted God's sovereignty as control, his order as oppression. And the angels who once sang in harmony began to murmur in dissonance. Heaven, once perfect in unity, trembled. And then came a voice, not loud, not angry, but resolute. A name, a declaration. Michael, meaning who is like God, not a question. Stand. Michael rose not in ambition, but in loyalty. Not for power, but for truth. The hosts divided. Those who stayed faithful to the Creator stood behind Michael. Those swayed by pride rallied behind Lucifer. And in that moment, heaven cracked. This wasn't a battle of blades. It was a battle of allegiance. But oh, how the skies shook. Wings collided, light clashed with light, and songs of worship turned to cries of war. What had never been broken now broke. This was not metaphor. This was not myth. This was the first war ever fought, and it was not for territory. It was for truth. Lucifer, once clothed in radiance, now burned with rage. What began as pride turned to fury. The same voice that once sang praises now screamed defiance, and for a moment the balance tipped. It looked like darkness could win. Oh, but light does not yield. By the power of the Most High, the faithful forces prevailed. Lucifer was cast out not gently, but hurled like lightning across eternity. He who had soared now fell, not to earth, lower into chaos, into absence, into the void. He had aimed for the throne but landed in the dust. 1/3 of the stars fell with him, but heaven remained. What was torn would be healed. What was tested became unshakable. The angels who remained faithful stood not because they were blind, but because they believed. And yet, this was not the end of the story. Lucifer may have fallen, but his voice would echo still. He would walk among the shadows of a new creation. He would tempt, he would twist, he would deceive. He would never win, because light never dies. And loyalty to the Creator, once tested, shines even brighter. Part 5. The Fall to Earth. Lucifer's dominion over darkness banished from heaven. Lucifer becomes Satan. His rebellion now seeks to drag creation into his ruin. He fell like lightning, not into fire, but into silence. Not into screams, but into a stillness so vast it swallowed the memory of music. Lucifer, once heaven's brightest star, now lay in exile. He was not destroyed. That would have been merciful. He was cast out, severed from the presence he was created to reflect. And in the void that followed, the universe watched but did not interfere. Lucifer drifted. Time meant nothing to him now. He was beyond days, outside hours, but within him, the wound of pride festered. He replayed every moment, every word. I will ascend. I will set my throne above the stars. I will be like the Most High. And now he lay beneath creation itself, till he saw it earth, raw, new, unblemished. A world spoken into being, not forged. Mountains rose like declarations. Oceans breathed with rhythm. Trees swayed in silent worship. And then came them. Not angels, not celestial warriors. but fragile beings made of dust, man and woman. They weren't radiant like angels. 8. They didn't soar. They didn't command armies. Yet they walked with God. They bore his image. They laughed with him. Lucifer seethed. He had sung before the throne. He had bathed in the glory of the Most High. And yet these mortals were given the earth as inheritance. He would not accept it. He could not rule in heaven. He would corrupt the earth. So he watched. Days passed like centuries. The man tilled. The woman gathered. They danced, bathed in light, naked, unashamed. They spoke with God as a child speaks to a father. So Lucifer slithered in, not with horns, not with hate, but with a question. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree? The doubt was subtle, gentle. It didn't attack. It invited. And she listened. Just as 33.3% of heaven's host had leaned in, so did she. So did Adam. And then the sound. Not thunder, not trumpet, but the crack of innocence breaking. The fruit was eaten, the garden breached. And God came not to destroy, but to ask, "Where are you?" But the question was never for God's benefit. It was for theirs. Shame entered the world, then blame, then fear. Lucifer smiled. Victory, not yet. But it had begun. The expansion of darkness. Lucifer didn't need to possess everyone. He only needed to shift the direction of the heart, away from trust, towards self. Cain rose and killed Abel not for hatred, but for envy. The children of men began to build altars not for worship, but for power. Kings rose, empires formed, pride returned. Every time God offered covenant, Lucifer countered with compromise. He whispered to Pharaoh, "You are God. Why kneel to another?" He deceived nations. Sacrifice children, and rain will fall. He corrupted worship. Take God's name, but twist his word. And slowly, the earth that was very good became a battlefield, not of swords, but of souls. From the garden to the crossroads, he appeared in different forms, a spirit, a shadow. Never the same, but always familiar. He didn't need to be worshipped. He only needed to be obeyed. In the time of Noah, he filled the earth with violence. In Babel, he inspired men to reach heaven on their own terms. In the desert, he tempted Israel with idols, not because he believed in them, but because they distracted. In the courts of Job, he stood to accuse not only Job, but God's own character. He twisted faith into fear, obedience into legalism, passion into perversion. And still, God did not abandon the story. Humanity's resistance and the flickers of light. Lucifer underestimated one thing. The image of God in mankind could be buried, but not erased. A man named Abraham heard God's voice and obeyed. A shepherd named Moses faced Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." A boy named David stared down a giant not with fear, but with faith. Each time darkness rose, a candle of resistance was lit. Lucifer raged. For every king he corrupted, a prophet would rise. For every idol he erected, a remnant would return. And in the silence between the testaments, 400 years of no prophets, no visions, Lucifer smiled again, until he heard a heartbeat. The one he couldn't corrupt, born not in a palace, but in a manger. Not with legions, but with straw. Jesus. Lucifer recognized him. Not the name, but the presence. The light, the unyielding righteousness. So he waited until he was weak, fasting, hungry, and then the adversary approached. "If you are the Son of God, command these stones." But the temptation failed. 3 times he tried. 3 times he was denied. Lucifer had succeeded in Eden. But here in the wilderness he lost, and yet he didn't retreat. He watched, planned. When Jesus healed, Lucifer sowed doubt. When Jesus taught, he provoked division. When Jesus loved, he incited hatred, till the day the crowd shouted, "Crucify him!" And as nails pierced flesh, Lucifer thought he'd won. The mistake, 3 days, that's all he had. For 3 days, darkness laughed. But on the 3rd day, the stone rolled away, and Lucifer learned what he had never considered. You can kill the body, but you cannot extinguish the word. A kingdom divided. Today, Lucifer still walks. He is not gone. Whispers not through fire, but through distraction, through apathy, through ego, through screens. But his kingdom is fractured, because light came not to destroy darkness, but to expose it. And now, the war continues. But it will not last forever. Part 6. The Final Judgment. Lucifer's last stand, and the eternal flame, the end foretold. Satan's final defiance, Christ's triumph, and the restoration of all things. Chapter 1. The silence before the storm. Before there was light, there was glory. Before there was man, there was music. Before there was sin, there was rebellion. And now, there is an end. This is not metaphor, not parable. This is prophecy made manifests, spoken by fire, sealed in blood, and written across time by a hand that never trembles. Lucifer's time is almost over. He knows it. He's always known. It's every moment since the fall has been a countdown. Every temptation, every deception, every war and whisper and wandering soul. All of it driven by one thing: delay. He isn't building a kingdom. He's postponing a sentence. But justice doesn't wait forever. The heavens pause. There is no music, no storm, no thunder. It's just stillness. A quiet so profound that even the angels stop singing. Creation holds its breath. Then the scroll opens. The final seal breaks. The sky tears wide. And from the white space between realms he comes, riding not with haste, but with purpose. His eyes like blazing fire. On his head, many crowns. Robes dipped in blood. On his thigh written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. The armies of heaven follow him, not because they must, but because they believe. Every warrior, every soul, every martyr who once cried, "How long, O Lord?" they now rise behind the one who needs no sword to conquer, and on earth. The last rebellion rallies. Lucifer doesn't fight out of hope, he fights out of fury. Nations gather like waves, their banners lifted high. Pride, autonomy, freedom. But what is freedom if it ends in fire? He leads them not as a king, but as a fugitive armed with lies. They follow him, not because they trust, but because they fear a truth too heavy to bear. And then, the heavens split fully. The Lamb who was slain now roars like a lion. He does not plead, does not explain. He reigns. The war is not long. There are no drawn-out battles, no cinematic clashes. This is not myth. This is authority descending. And when the voice speaks, that same voice that once said, "Let there be light," everything false begins to fall. The serpent is seized, bound, chained, not by brute force, by command. He is cast into the abyss, not to die, but to wait. Chapter 2. The 1,000 years and the final rebellion. The abyss is not a place. It is a verdict. Prison not made of bars, but of absence. No light, no presence. No sound but the echo of his own name. A name that no longer holds glory, only shame. Lucifer falls into this place not screaming, but silent. He knows this is not the final sentence. This is delay. 1,000 years, the prophecy says. 1,000. Not a metaphor, not a symbol. A measurable span. 10 centuries. Over 36,000 full moons will rise and fall over the earth while he waits. And above, earth breathes again. The first time since Eden, peace reigns. The nations rest. The lion and lamb lie side by side. Justice walks among the people. Truth no longer hides behind metaphor or religion. The king rules with a rod of iron, not of cruelty, but of clarity. No court is needed. No lawyer speaks. The Word himself speaks, and what he says is so. Temples are replaced by presence. Sacrifice replaced by communion. Children laugh without fear. Elders age with joy, and still the abyss waits. Because even peace is not the final test. When the 1,000 years are fulfilled, to the hour, to the breath, the abyss opens once more. Not because God is unsure, but because every heart must be revealed. Lucifer rises, does not sneak. He does not slither. He steps onto earth, not as shadow, but as habit reborn. And mankind follows. Not all, but enough, he whispers, and they lean in. You can have more. You deserve more. Familiar words. the same lie as Eden, the same pitch as heaven, and still it works. He gathers them, not as warriors, but as dreamers. They do not see themselves as rebels. They see themselves as free. He leads them across the earth, from the north to the south, across time zones and continents. The crowd grows like grains of sand on the shore. They surround the beloved city, not with rage, but with hope twisted into defiance. And just as the first sword is drawn, fire falls, not from earth, from heaven. It is not chaos, it is not fury, it is justice, clean, final, unshakable. Lucifer stands and falls. No scream, no curse, only silence. Because in the end, there is nothing more to say. Chapter 3. The Great White Throne. All shall stand, the fire recedes. Ash settles where armies once stood. Smoke curls through silence, not as chaos but as closure. The rebellion is over. It's not crushed, not conquered, undeniably ended. And now, the throne appears, not golden, not polished, but great and white. Blinding in brilliance, terrifying in purity. It floats beyond dimension, outside time, above space. It needs no setting. The throne is the setting. For it all stand, kings and slaves, saints and tyrants, mothers and murderers, the great and the small, the forgotten, the famous, the faceless. All stand, not by choice, not by command, by truth. No one speaks, because there's nothing left to justify. No more excuses. No blaming childhoods, cultures, trauma, temptations. Every pretense burns, every motive laid bare. And the book's open. There isn't just one, there are many. The book of deeds, the book of thoughts, the book of secrets, the book of every word ever spoken, every idle phrase, every unfinished prayer, every secret thought whispered in the dark. It's all there, written not in ink but in truth. The silence deepens. One by one, souls step forward, not in pride, not in terror, in inevitability. Some cry, some sigh, some fall on their knees before a single word is read, and then the final book opens, the book of life. No list has ever been more debated, no role has ever been more desired. There are no bribes, no backdoors, no family names that guarantee inclusion. The only thing that matters is your name written there? If it is, the throne speaks. Well done. Not perfect job, not you were sinless. It's just you knew me, and I knew you. And if it is not, there is no speech, no yelling. Only separation, not punishment, not torture. Just eternal distance from the only source of life that ever existed. And that truly is death. Lucifer stands too. He does not deny. He does not protest. He knows his time is up. He who said, "I will ascend," is now judged not as a fallen god, but as a liar. Not as a king, but as a deceiver. He is cast into the lake of fire. It's not as ruler of hell, but as its first prisoner. No throne, no subjects. It's only judgment. Forever. Chapter 4. The restoration of all things. The new heaven and the new earth. The sentence is passed. The enemy is gone. Not locked, not hidden, but erased. And the old earth, fractured by sin, burned by war, soaked with blood, begins to fall away. What remains is silence. And then a voice. Not thunderous, yet absolute. Not distant, yet cosmic. Not loud, just unmistakable. Behold, I make all things new. And the sky breathes again. But it is not the sky we knew. This is new. Not a restoration, a recreation, a rebirth. The elements themselves obey the word and dissolve. The earth rolls back like a scroll. Mountains melt. Oceans bow. Time folds. And from the dust of judgment rises something no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no heart has imagined. A new heaven. Not just beautiful, perfect, not just safe, eternal. It's no scars, no sin, no shadows. and at its center, a city. But not a city of marble and steel. No pretense, no politics, no palaces. This is the New Jerusalem, prepared like a bride on her wedding day. Its foundations shimmer with gems unknown to mortal minds. The streets are gold, but not for wealth. They shine because nothing hides in darkness anymore, and there is no temple. Why? Because God is the temple. And the Lamb, the very one who once bled and was buried, now shines so brightly. There is no need for sun, moon, or fire. The people walk without fear. Nations move without borders. There are no borders, no clocks, no war. And from the throne a river flows, clear as crystal. On its banks grow trees that bear fruit every month, never withering, and the leaves they heal, not wounds, but memories. Yet grief fades, regret melts, trauma becomes testimony. Nothing cursed remains, not a whisper of shame, not a stain of rebellion. And then we see him, face to face, no veil, no cloud, no someday, just now. And we know, truly know, this was what we were always meant for. Not survival, not struggle, but communion, intimacy, worship without distraction, joy without fear. The story that began with rebellion ends with restoration. What was broken is mended. What was stolen is returned. What was lost is home again. Lucifer, forgotten. Not erased from memory, but irrelevant to the glory that now fills the cosmos. He is not the end of the story. He is the proof that nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop the will of God. And the Lamb? He reigns, not from a throne of stone, but from the hearts of every soul who said yes when it was hardest. There are no more tears, no more night. Only the light of a love that cannot be outrun, outsinned, or outlasted. This is eternity, and it begins now. Lucifer's story didn't end with fire, it ended with silence. Not because he was forgotten, but because God's justice never needs to scream to be final. And in that silence, the Lamb reigns forever. If this journey moved you, challenged you, made you think deeper about the battle between pride and truth, hit that like button to support the message. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to God's Light. Stories of Jesus for more powerful biblical storytelling every week. Until next time, stay grounded in grace and always walk in the light.